Hi guys, I'm Danny, and I started a Sunday gym because I've noticed lately that people tend to go to colleges and universities without actually knowing why they're there. And afterwards, starting jobs that are unfulfilling. So I'm interviewing different professionals to see what they have to say and share their knowledge and experience with you. I hope you enjoy it. Right, hey Matt, how are you doing today?
I am great, man. It's nice to see you, brother.
Nice to see you again. I'm a little bit under the weather, but thankfully the audience won't have to listen to my voice. You'd be doing most of the talking anyways.
Yeah. All right, man.
We'll be talking about the writing process, and I love talking to people that are writing books, people like you, because you guys are just absolutely amazing. And I've always been an office guy. I'll probably die that way, but with you, it's like completely different thing because normally you cannot do it. You can't set your mind for a working out. When it comes, and you have to do it immediately. And this is one of the many, many things I love about you people. And my first question is, how do you know what to add or remove when you're almost done with a book?
So the process so this is my third book. Shut the F up and listen. This is my third book.
Links
One of
in
the
the
things
description.
I'm sorry.
Links in the description
Oh,
below.
man, thank you for that, man. I appreciate that. Um, so it really it's really about rewriting. And I can't stress that enough. For any aspiring author, you're going to write your book and then you're going to rewrite your entire book. And that's, I
Well,
think, anywhere you find the difference between what you want to keep in and what you don't. Now, the other thing that I think is really incredibly important is to have a really good relationship with an editor. So the copy
okay.
editor that I worked with, I've known him since he was 16. And so he's a PhD creative writing professor. He writes for a living. And that was huge for the development of how the book was laid out, what was kept in, what was, left out. We really wanted this one specifically to be a quick read, right? And so I
Yeah.
wasn't writing War and Peace or Crime and Punishment. I mean, I was writing a book on listening to teach people how to listen more effectively. And I wanted them to read a chapter, Denny, close the book, set it down, and go practice. And so that's the format of this book. I think there's a lot of books out there that, and it's going to sound mean, but take themselves a little too seriously. And that's not
Oh, I
my
have a
book.
full list of them right here. There's nothing mean about it. I've read them. Some of them I've read more than once, and and I love Tolstoy. I love that kind of literature. Solzhenitsyn as well. And that's actually one of the questions, Matt, because a Russian officer from the Imperial Army that was before communism. Now they had blue jackets,
Mhm.
black trousers, black boots, and a yellow stripe at each side of the trousers. Right? That's like two, maybe three sentences. That guy needed like 15 pages to describe it. At one point, I was like, okay, I'm not slow. I am a huge fan of the movies
Yeah.
of Lord of the Rings. I tried to read it. I can't, man. If you tell me that you went camping and you were in a forest, I can understand. I can visualize you in the middle of a forest. You don't have to spend 20 pages to explain what a forest is. So this is why one of those questions was like that. But there's also one interesting thing that you've mentioned. I'm being left with the impression that it's not a good, or at least not a wise thing to be a writer and your own editor at the same time.
Oh, yeah, man, no way. You have to have that objective third person. You have to have that extra set of eyes on stuff. So the first book was actually published by a publishing house, and so they assigned me an editor, which was magnificent. My second book, so here's the deal, dude. My second book, I tried to edit it myself, and it was a complete failure. Right. I mean, and now the book was good. The execution of the book was terrible because I didn't have the right team around me. Not only did I have a great copy editor in Derek Pollard, but I also brought in a layout team. And so the way that you put the words on the page, dude, is a huge thing that you have to pay attention to. And I never gave credence to that because I'm not a writer. I have a day job, right? I mean, I do
Yeah.
things with, but I've had people who've read the book say things like, I've never seen a book laid out like that. And I had another person who actually did a podcast with who interviewed me about the book. And he said, did you purposefully build space in the book to make people feel like they were listening? And I was like, why, yes, we did. And so spacing of the word, spacing on the page, blank space, where you highlight stuff, Denny, those are all wildly important for you to pay attention to, which
Yeah.
is why I think a lot of people just, it's like podcasting, dude. It's like they get behind the microphone because they know they can talk and everybody's going to listen. No, that's not the game, right? This is a show. What you do is a show. There's another level. When you're trying to author a book, you need to realize that you have to take it very seriously because you're creating art, man. And
Oh yeah.
art isn't something you half-ass, you have to whole-ass it.
No, I'm actually guilty of that myself because first of all, I've never tried to write anything. I wrote some projects and some essays when I was in school and in college, of course. But that aside, I don't write. And I've always been a man of few words. I don't, expand a lot because I guess I can't, and I don't. It's not in me. My point is that when I read something, like you said, perfectly structured, my brain is immediately like, well, yeah, it's supposed to be that way. No, it isn't. Somebody made it that way. Somebody made it possible. And I'm always neglecting those people. And it's like the IT paradox when you have an IT team and at some point like everything is working. Why are we even paying you guys? And if something breaks down, like why are we even paying you guys? That broke down. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But I myself am guilty of neglecting so many professions. Like I'm almost ashamed of myself, man.
Yeah.
What do you do? Because that's your third book. What do you do when you have the finished product? It's already out there. I'm not talking about the digital stuff. I'm talking about hard copy. What do you do when it's finished and suddenly like, that idea, I should have put that in. It would be perfect. Because I'm sure it happens every now and then.
Yeah. So, uh, yeah, dude, I mean, that's such a wonderful question. Um, so Pablo Picasso said the difference between a good artist and a great artist is the great artist knows when to put the paintbrush down, right? And so what we create as authors is that point in time of what we're hoping is the best product we can give. Um, Dude, I would have liked to have rewritten a whole bunch of stuff after the damn book came out, right? So I also recorded the audiobook since I'm a professional podcaster. I do voice
Yeah.
work. And so I did my own audiobook. And when I was doing the audiobook, I was finding myself adding things and,
All right.
elaborating on different things. It's a different medium, right? And so
Yeah.
I was like, damn, I should have put that in the book, right? I wish I would have just said this a little bit differently, but that's the way all art is, man. And even if you're writing a business book, because my first two books were business books. The Social Media Handbook for Financial Advisors, I wrote the first book for advisors in the States on social media. And then the second was the 99 Best Marketing Ideas for Financial Advisors. Again, my niche is financial advisors. That's who my company, Proudmouth, focuses on every day. And dude, they were still pieces of art and I wanted them to feel that way, even though that they were very dictatorial and they were very specific in their focus and intention.
Actually, that's my one of the other questions. And again, I'm in that category too. I sometimes have issues with attention. If it's not very important to me,
Hmm.
I don't know whether if it's ego or something else or just me being stupid, because that's also an option. I kind of like let it go. I don't put much attention to it. But what methods do you use to grab people's attention? Because I am pretty much of the majority here. A lot of people are like that. And what methods do you use?
Well, it helps when you have a ridiculous book cover, right?
Yeah.
And so honestly, the reason why I named the book this, the reason why the cover looks like this is because I wanted somebody to stop in their tracks in a bookstore. Right? Whoa, what's that muppety looking guy, he's telling me to shut the F up. And it's funny, my when I was sitting down with my team, they were like, "Well, Matt, what are your book goals?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, like a lot of people read the book, right? That'd be great. I don't ever plan on making a lot of money on the book. That's not what my bag of tricks is. I'm not a professional author like that, right? I work. I have something else I do outside of writing. Um, but I said, look, I just want people to read the cover and realize they need to shut up. And honestly, Denny, that to me is maybe a little bit sensational. I mean, the title of the book is sensational. But the other thing is to really have a plan, right? Even though that I'm not a professional author, like the ones that everybody's heard of, man, I would love to be one, right? So I'd love to have a million people to buy the book and read it and say, "Oh my gosh, this was life-changing. My relationships have changed. I'm a better partner, I'm a better husband, I'm a better wife, I'm a better father, I'm a better, all of those sorts of things." The book was written specifically, just so you know, for men because men aren't trained in the same way that women generally are societally when it comes to listening. I know that's very black and white and grandiose, but
No,
but
it
that
is.
was the focus, right?
It's
When you're
just,
writing,
yeah.
you have to have your audience, brother, right? Um, and so in the cool thing is getting the feedback and then acting on that feedback, Denny, is something I don't think a lot of authors do. They would rather just sit and write. And for me, we run a social media and a podcasting company. Interacting with your fans is really, really important. And so, dude, I had a guy who's a friend of mine who bought the book, and for his anniversary, he said, I gave my wife the best gift I could ever give her, which is I finally learned how to listen. And dude, I mean, come on, man. I mean, it's like, you help that one person, but really, I help one person, and that made me feel like $1 million. It made
I
the
know.
whole process, the year-long process it took, to get the book all the way to publish, totally worth it.
I'm a creature of habits. Like, if you've known me for 5 minutes, you pretty much know 90% about me. Every single year, I go to a specific hotel in a specific city. I'm staying in the same room, and I know the manager. And this is my rule: 9 days, no shirts, no shoes, no socks. That's, and we're drunk all the time to get it out of my system. Once in July, once in August. That's how
Wow.
it is. When I started the podcast, and it's still mostly on LinkedIn, but now it's pretty much everywhere. And there was this bartender it's a specific, again, very specific bar I'm going to. It's like a hippie bar. And everybody there are drunk all the time. It's perfect. And I went there and the bartender was like, are you Danny? I'm like, no. No, we work together in C3I. I have you on LinkedIn. I started watching the podcast, and it was C3I was a call center, no, call center.
Mhm.
So we were, taking calls. It was regular call center. Like, I hated that job, and when I started watching, I left. I don't know what I'm doing here, but it's a job, so it's a start. I'm like, pretty good. I turned around to my buddy and said, we're not doing this here. No, I'm super thankful that I helped one person. I am not going to sit here and be piss face in front of the people. That's everybody back to the room. So thankfully, the hotel has this like pool in the hotel, so we got drunk there. It was pretty good. So I know the feeling, and thank God this guy recognized me. Otherwise, he'd be like, "That's the guy talking about." Ah. I have another question about the writing process.
Mhm.
And you know that feeling when you told a story and you were like, did I tell that story like yesterday or the day before? Because we're like that. Sometimes you get to repeat yourself and even without even realizing it. How do you avoid not mixing, information within the books so that the reader, you're reading a book like, wait a minute, I just wrote that. I just read that somewhere. And because, this is how our brains work. When I was in college, I did a lot of projects for my classmates for money. And I have a very specific way of speaking, and therefore I have a very specific way of writing.
Mhm.
So, you can read like 10, 15 of those, and like, oh, this guy, what did it? I hope he got paid. So,
Yeah.
How do you do, what do you do to avoid that?
So I don't. Now, if I was writing nonfiction or if I was writing fiction and, I wanted to try to keep something fresh and funky and new all the time, like Christopher Moore is really good at that. He's one of my favorite authors who writes funny fiction. Um, and all of his stuff is very, very fresh. But I'm writing, and this is going to sound dorky. I wrote a self-help book, dude, and so I want to be repetitive because even if you read, you love watching the Lord of the Ring movies, so
Yep.
do I, by the way. And so every time I watch them, I see something that I didn't see before, or I hear something in a way that I didn't hear it the first time. And so I think being repetitive, especially in the world of writing, is wildly important, especially if a very, very specific message. My message is to shut the F up and listen. You have two ears and one mouth. You need to listen twice as much as you talk. And here's how to practice, right? And so, the value proposition that you're going into the book, I think repetition is wildly important. My first book, The Social Media Handbook, actually has my 5 types of communicators in that first book. But I knew that I'm writing a different book for a different audience. Nobody's going to read probably that first book. And so, therefore, I wanted to use the same analogies that I used because they're damn good analogies, by the way, in order to drive it home. But I mean, if you look at Tony Robbins's book, Mel Robbins's books, Brene Brown books, right? These books that are in the same genre. I mean, obviously, I'm talking about something very specific, and theirs are much broader. They're telling the same stories over and over and over again because they're driving that point home. So again, that's the difference between fiction and nonfiction. I think fiction, you don't want to be writing the same stuff. So one of my favorite authors, her name is Jean Davis. She wrote something called the Naravan trilogy or series. It's like 7 books. And everything, every sentence has been imagined by her organically. That's not how I wrote my book. So,
No, that's pretty good. You've mentioned that thing about Pablo Picasso. I haven't heard that before, but it's amazing. And that's actually the other question I want to ask. Is it a gut feeling? Is it the years of experience you have behind you, or an advice from a friend or an editor in your case?
yeah, dude, it's the editor, brother, right? Right. And that's why I think it's so vitally important to bring somebody in because honestly, I'd still be screwing with the book right now. And it came out in November, right? And so, and as we record this, right, it's the middle of May. And so I'm really happy that I had somebody who said, okay, you're done. You're done. Now it's time to work the book. And I think a lot of authors have that issue because they're striving for something that I don't believe is attainable, which is perfection. My book is not perfect in any way, shape, or form. I didn't want it to be perfect. I actually built in imperfections in the book because, and as dorky as this sounds, Denny, listening's not perfect, man. In
Yeah.
fact, you just had a guy on one of your shows recently, conflict resolution guy, and I just spaced on his name. I'm totally sorry about it, but
No
um,
worries.
he was talking about how powerful listening was when you're trying to negotiate and when you're trying to interrogate people or mediate different things. And so it's messy, it's emotional, and I wanted the book to be a little bit of messy and emotional because that's how I wanted people to feel. Instead of I didn't want it to have this word was placed there perfectly. One, I'm not that guy, and two, that's not what I wanted the experience of reading the book or listening to the book to seem like.
Listening is tremendously important. And sometimes I think people struggle with it because, well, let's be honest, there's a lot of information you don't want to hear, you don't want to know about it,
Mhm.
but you kind of have to, or at least you have to pretend. This is a trick. My first job was a bartender. And that you have to listen to your client. I couldn't care less about your sister's fourth marriage, man. I don't, but you can't say it because, first of all, my salary was pretty good, but the tips were even amazing. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, money were pretty good. And the senior bartender taught me that trick. When somebody starts talking, you start counting your teeth with your tongue.
Mm.
Mm. And when you hit 50, then it's time to interrupt. Because
So,
you look like you're paying attention. One,
mm,
two.
huh.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. I would really swing the pendulum in the other direction, and this just might be a difference between you and I personally. I want to hear about their sister's fourth marriage because I just love human beings so much. Now I understand there's a huge difference sitting drunk in a bar, being a bartender, and
Yeah.
hanging out with somebody who's telling you a story.
Oh
But
no, if
I am,
I'm fine.
yeah, I
But
am
it's 2 o'clock
so
in the morning and I had enough.
well, yes. And so that's the thing. And on top of that, you have to move and make everybody sitting at that bar feel
Yeah.
special. I get that, right? And there are tips, and by the way, in the book that help you learn how to communicate that a little bit more effectively. But dude, um, I can't even imagine. I've never been a bartender. I've had some really terrible jobs, man, but I've never been a bartender before. I know it can be wildly rewarding, and I know it can also be terrifically terrible just having to deal with all of that stuff because man people will tell you stuff you're
Oh,
right you don't want to know.
uh, I recommend it to young men who are genetically taller and stronger, and the bone structure is thicker. Because I'm built like that, and I recommend it to those guys. Because every now and then, well, I don't know now, but probably still the same. Uh, your favorite soccer team will lose a game, and you just end up literally with a pint in the face, and it hurts. Or if you just, with your back and you doing the mugs and the dishes because you have to do it, and then they hit you in the back, not in the face, which hurts slightly less, but it's still a little bit unpleasant.
Yeah.
But in money's pretty good, and you end up with actually more good memories than bad ones. So
Mhm.
I recommend it to people that have good body strength. Otherwise, I wouldn't. I have another side question.
Mm.
What during the writing process, what can be the biggest mistake an author can do?
Well, during the process, skipping a day. And so, every day is leg day when you're exercising. All my friends who are really heavy into that, that's one of the things that they talk about. And in writing is a discipline, and it's a muscle that you have to continue to exercise. And if you don't, then you're not going to have as good of a product. And so when I was writing my first book, because it was my first book and I didn't really have any experience, and I was working with a big publishing house, my editor, the handler, basically is who they were, Denny, right? She would say to me, you need to write at least 1,500 words every day. And you would think, well, that's
Wow.
not that many. But man, just trying to grind out 1,500 words a day, especially when you're not motivated to write 1,500 words a day,
Yeah.
is really difficult. But once you get into that flow, and you know that every day, and it needs to be something very specific, 8 a.m. with your cup of coffee in your favorite seat, with your laptop sitting in front of you or your iPad or pad of paper, whatever is your preferred way to get that stuff out of your brain. And the other thing I think a lot of people don't pay attention to is it's probably going to suck, and it's okay. Because in that suckiness, you actually might find some real good nuggets that you can pull. And I did. And I was very, very grateful for building that discipline.
This is my 15th or 16th interview with an author, and this is, I think, my second or third, you know, second episode with those questions. And right now, I am actually starting to realize and understand the importance of the editor.
Mm.
Every single time this is a public apology now. Every single time I heard someone is an editor, I'm like, really? Like, what kind of connections did you pull up to get that kind of a job? I never took that seriously.
Mm.
And now that you're explaining it that way, I like because it makes sense if you think about it. I never really thought about it. That's just sad, man. That's sad.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're here to learn, brother. I mean, as long as we're on the planet, we're going to realize that we've done stupid stuff, said stupid stuff, and realized stupid things as we go. And not saying that you're stupid, but I'm very happy that you've made that realization because it really is a really crazy skill set, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable, especially Derek, the one who I worked with, because he's a poet. the way that he would choose the sequence of words, and then after he would give it back to me and say, because what we did is we did a writer's retreat. And so I met him down in Florida. We had rented this little beach house. Wasn't on the beach because that's way too much money, but it was, a couple of 100 yards away from the beach. And we sat there for 4 days and really worked the book. And he would finish something and hand it back to me, and I would read it and say, but that's what I meant. Or wow, that actually, it's that I love how that's how I wanted it to sound. And it's just such an absolutely miraculous skill that I don't have. I don't want anybody to hand me their writing and say, hey Matt, make this better. I don't have that skill set. I am much more on the front end of all of that. I mean, even professionally, like I will write something or think of a system or a new product or service for our company, and I hand it off to my business partner. He's like the chocolate to my peanut butter, and he's the one who makes it amazing, right? I don't make things amazing. I just come up with the beginning ideas. And I think with the book, with working with Derek Pollard, that was such an unbelievable opportunity to really sit with somebody who is an artist with words, Denny. I mean, that's that thing that, and I mean, he's probably published, well, he's, I think, published 7 books of his own, but he's also an editor at the University of Michigan Press. And so he had its poetry books. And that was just such a neat contrast between me, this public speaker, I'm a keynote speaker, I travel all over the world speaking. Um, that's such a different skill than sitting down and trying to get stuff succinctly and distinctly on a page to hopefully move people to take the action that you're asking them to take.
No, absolutely. He sounds like tremendously talented guy, obviously. And yeah, we are learning, every day, new thing every day. But it kind of hits me a little bit in the stomach when something is so obvious and I've been staring at it for years, and now I'm like, because a person sees something that observes, like a man sees. If I'm observing something, I'm gonna see it, but only if it's in my mind. If it's not there, it can just, be in front of my nose and I still won't see it. So that's why I said, it's a little bit hitting. But I guess it's part of life, you know how it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And with that said, Matt, sorry about that on the weather. Huge thanks for answering those questions. All of the links will be in the video, just like in the previous one. I haven't uploaded it yet, but I will soon. And thanks for that, man. I really appreciate it. I'll see you again.
Thanks for having me on your show, man.
Likewise. Guys, I hope this one was useful. Please follow the channel on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Gap, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Ring the bell and all the good stuff. Have a nice week ahead, and I'll see you next Sunday.